We are living in unusual times, no doubt, and I wanted to bring you the information you need to know. The first thing we are going to look at is the melt up. It's going crazy. I'm going to show you some details. The second thing is inflation everywhere. I mean, it is very clear what's happening, not just at the grocery store, but also with asset prices. The third is the currency woes, because what's happening now, if you see how fast this can happen, it should start to wake people up to what's really going on behind the scenes. I've got all of that and more. Let's begin. First things first, markets and the economy brace as the Federal Reserve's first rate hike could come within 2 months. That's what the expectation is. We have no idea what's going to go on. We're going to get the Fed meeting minutes really this week. I'll bring that information to you, and that's going to give us a little bit more insight as to what's going to happen in the next meeting of the Fed. We will see. The Fed is responding to inflation pressures that are running by some measures at the fastest rate in nearly 40 years. This is the number one. This is the key, because what happens with the interest rates will determine what happens in the stock market, will determine what happens in the housing market, and of course, will have an impact on the economy. So whether or not we enter the next stage through January as billions and billions of dollars enter into both the real estate and stock markets, we have to understand behind all of that is this super bubble created by central banks, and of course on the fiscal side with what the government is doing in the stimulus measures. So keep that in mind. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you here, and a little bit of humor, because you could see Jim Cramer getting out there, making sure that he's cheerleading. Things can and do right. It can be different this time. That's literally a quote. Sometimes you have to suspend your short-term skepticism to make long-term money. Yeah, that's right. And he also says this here: I'd rather be an idiot who makes money than a genius who misses out on great opportunities. It sounds like something from Reddit, but here it is. Jimboy Cramer. Now let's talk about inflation, because I think it's pretty crazy to see this. Look, $29,000 for the average used car. Would-be buyers are aghast. Think about that for a second. $29,000. Now that's the average car. That doesn't mean if you go and look for a used car, it's $29,000. But if you see what has happened with used car prices as an example, well, then you know things can get crazy faster than what we would ever believe. Think about this. Where were they at 2 years ago? The situation was Hertz is going bankrupt, and suddenly we were flooding the markets with all these used cars, and within a short period of time, everything changed. Nobody expected this, of course, and here we are today. What does it tell you, not just for the currency and what it means for you, but just think about how quickly things can change, right? Big time. All right, look at it. Chinese developers had an annual drop in property sales last year. Okay, so you get that. That's not good news, obviously. But what happened? What happened with Evergrande's stock? That's right, it went up. Well, it's barely up, but of course, it went up. And it's hard to probably see. Let me just move this away from my head for a second here. Right above me, right in here, you could see again another day in the green. Well, it's at 161, and I mean, you just go back a few months and you're looking at this thing just falling further and further and further. Well, it's not just Evergrande, but of course, it's all over the place. Now, I want to talk about something here for a second. We are going to look at what is going on with the markets, because there is some serious inflation. There is some serious melt up. Deal making surges past $5.8 trillion to the highest levels on record. Private equity and SPACs fuel mergers and acquisitions activity as investment banking fees hit $157 billion. Look, take a look at this chart. Global M&A soars past $5.8 trillion, 2021, unlike anything we have ever seen before. Now, we did see this kind of surge right before 2015, where globally it was a very bad year. And we also saw this leading up to the financial crisis. Interesting, no doubt. But we are watching right now all of this coming on the back of super low interest rates. At the same time, there's been this huge surge from 2020 into 2021. But what is going on right now? The economy, the real economy. Well, this is the US manufacturing PMI. And I've been covering this. I showed you if we see this continued trend, gotta watch out. And here it is. Certainly the surge on the way up can be exaggerated because we came off such a low. But it has now gone month after month after month declining. Now this line right here is your 50 line. Anything below that is considered to be a contraction. We are heading closer to that. We will see. Output expansion muted as firms register slower upturn in new orders. Why? Is this because things just cost too much? Well, we could argue that. What's been going on though in the markets? Apple's rise to $3 trillion market cap shows the value of its massive share buybacks. Central theme once again. What happens when you have interest rates at rock bottom? Companies can do whatever they please. In fact, they had spent $467 billion in the past 10 years on share buybacks. $500 billion to buy back their own shares. Who has been the biggest beneficiary of all this? Well, of course, anybody who invested over that 10 years had seen their portfolios grow. But who is the big one? I mean, there's nobody else than the insiders. I show people, by the way, how to get all this information, to see the insiders, the buying and the selling. And I have a video about this. If you go to my channel, you scroll down to the bottom, there's one that's the e-course, and you look through there. It says find out what insiders are buying and selling. There's a video there. It documents exactly how to get this. And if you do appreciate that, hit that thumbs up button. If you appreciate me showing the actual data itself, hit that thumbs up. Support me, okay? Look, who's this? Timothy D. Cook, back in August 25th. Alrighty. $354 million sale. In fact, if we round it, $355 million sale. So essentially what happened was he got a nice payout because as the stock hits certain levels of performance, right, the insiders are able to sell out. That's just the way this works. That's how their compensation is. Not Tim Cook, but for many CEOs, they take a relatively small salary because that's taxed at a high rate, and they instead prefer to use stocks and options. Well, during these periods of time, they can actually do so where they have, by the way, fueled by this nonsense of interest rates being at rock bottom, they can do the share buybacks. And they do this share buyback, and what happens? Every single time the stock rises higher and they execute their sales, timed appropriately all the while. Now, look, if you're holding long term, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. These stocks have been going up higher. Some stocks have kind of been trading within a range, and we have noticed, other than the mega cap stocks, I think I have that in here actually, there's only been a few that have really carried the market much higher. But here you can see Apple topping 3 trillion briefly. Under that, we've got Alphabet and Amazon, and Microsoft, and so on. Okay, they are rising considerably, and I mean, it's very clear what's going on here. Short interest as a percentage of the market cap. Come on, S&P 500. Nobody's shorting. When they say this, oh, everybody's in fear. They use that quote taken completely out of context from Warren Buffett. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Nobody is shorting the market. Nobody. Please, whenever you see that, please inform the people. Please. I think it's really, really important to understand. So here we are. We're going to get into the next subject because I think it's real key to understand what can happen. Your currency today, you're taking advantage of, and most people, I should say, are taking advantage of the particular situation. And that shouldn't be the case. Look, this is the US dollar to the Turkish lira. Right now, it is at the worst it has ever been. The Turkish lira continues to devalue against the US dollar, to devalue against real goods. And you could see it is now at 13 to 1. 13 to 1. Not very good. Okay, look, back in, where do you want to take it? Back in 2017, okay, a few years ago, this was at, let's say, 3.5. 3.5. And now suddenly the devaluation just accelerates dramatically. What would you do if your currency, you turn around one day and the value is 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, and it continues. Just over this last little while, it has accelerated. Look, from 8 to 1 down to 13 to 1. Just like that. You don't have time to react. You don't say, okay, well, now I'm going to change the way I invest. And now it doesn't happen like that. It really doesn't. Take a look. CPI year over year. 36% in their inflation rate. You can't keep up. Now, I'm not saying that this can happen in the US overnight. I'm not saying that it will happen. I don't know. But over a long enough timeline, we have seen that every currency is destroyed. But not destroyed against its peers. It's destroyed against real goods. Supermarket shelves bare in Sydney as you've got the staff shortages. 4 in 10 businesses see labor shortages as a significant issue. Call it what you want. It doesn't really matter. What I'm noticing here is that we are living in such a fragile system. That's all I'm trying to show. Doesn't matter because of the current issue. Doesn't matter because it's Australia. It's a fragile system, and we need to be more prepared. We need to take steps today to do our best in what we can do. Plunging natural gas supply shows Texas is still not ready for the cold. All right, what happened last year? What has happened previously? Well, of course, we know that this power grid is never going to be able to help anybody out. Okay, when times get tough, power's off. That's not good. We need to be prepared. What can we do? We can have our own. We can have geothermal. We can have our own generators. We can have solar power. We can have battery backup. We can do whatever it is. Okay, there's so many different things. Depends on where you are, of course. Different situation. Maybe you're in Iceland. Hey, you got a good situation there for some factors. Maybe you are in a very sunny place where there's sun, more than 300 days a year. Okay, solar might work for you. Depends on where you are. But just think about this, okay? It goes on far, far beyond what we're looking at. And I think this really summarizes the video. An invisible addiction, a rising gambling addiction has emerged. It's always been there, but right now more than ever before, since 2020, you have a lot of people right now today that are suddenly very, very knowledgeable about what happens in the markets. That's right. But if you talk to the people who have done it a long time, they seem to be more uncertain than anybody else. There's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know about something, the more confident you are. And I believe the more I research about anything, the more I realize how true this is. Because as you look into something, you have more and more questions. If you don't look into it and you just say, I'm just going to do dollar cost averaging. Okay, that might be your scenario, but to claim the knowledge around the situation while not actually knowing much is usually a recipe for disaster. So I don't know, whatever it is you want to do, please do it. Just understand that there are risks involved, but more importantly, prepare for what happens during these periods of time, okay? That's all I'm asking. If you support the channel, hit that thumbs up button. If you hate the channel, give that thumbs down. I appreciate that as well. All engagement, whether it's a hate comment or a thumbs down or a thumbs up or a subscribe or anything else, always supports the channel. So I do appreciate that very much. If you haven't seen this video yet, you definitely want to check it out. So just click it and I'll see you there.